Namatu Ratanatayasa. May I pay homage to the Triple Gem, the Buddhadharma and the Sangha, the respected Venerable Sumana, and all the devotees who are here today in this Buddhavihara temple for one-day meditation. So today we are here to learn to meditate. Or when we think about the meditation, most of the time we see or we think that we are going to have a peaceful mind, a calmful mind, or tranquilizing our mind. The way we are practicing meditation here today would be the insight meditation. So it's called Vipassana meditation, the way to come out from the misery. Normally in our day-to-day life, we are facing with so many different things, so many different things that we never expected to have it, from morning till evening. Sometimes we are expecting those things and sometimes we don't. So those miseries always troubles us. And in order to get out from those miseries, we normally seek for the meditation. And that meditation that we know these days is suppressing those defilements, suppressing those miseries, instead of eradicating those. So the meditation, in particular the insight meditation, is the way how we get out from those miseries. So if you take Buddha's, his own life history, when he was a prince, he had such a luxurious life. Such a luxurious life that we are expecting these days, we are desiring for. We want to have those luxurious life as well. So while he was a prince, as a Siddhartha Gautama, he was living in a palace. He was living with such a luxurious life. Things to eat, things to play, things to have a pleasure, everything that we would desire in this life. But yet, he wasn't satisfied with it after seeing the old age, sickness and death. So he went out. He left the palace in search of a happiness, in search to find out the peace, in search to find out the way out from the misery. Along the 6 years of strong practice, he dedicated himself for 6 years. But yet he couldn't find out the way out from the misery. He tried all the meditation techniques that he known at that time. And he tried each one of them. He tried fully, dedicated. But only what he got was a calmful, peaceful mind. But that wasn't the way out from his misery. And he had always the doubt that where is the path to get out from those miseries. So after the 6 years of practice, at the end of the day, he found what's called the insight meditation. So the whole of the Buddhist teaching is based on the insight meditation. It's called the Vipassana meditation. And that's the way that we can come out from the misery. And that misery is not because somebody gave it to us. Not somebody created to us. Those miseries we created by ourselves. And that miseries are not just somebody imposed to us, but we create it through our senses, that comes through our senses. When we see something, we tend to grasp it. When we grasp it, we tend to recognize it as good and bad. And when we recognize it, we try to put in a value. This is good, this is bad. And if that's a bad object, then we tend to develop aversion, negativities. And those negativities, again, start a new life. New life for the miseries, for the suffering, for the troubles. But in the same time, if we start having a positive thoughts of those objects, we tend to rejoice it. We tend to start on top of it. And another misery. So the Vipassana meditation, what it teaches us is to realize those miseries, how it is coming towards us. In practice of Vipassana meditation, whatever objects arises, first of all, our mind will cognize it that, oh, this is happening to me in our day-to-day life. We hear things, we see things, we touch things, and also we feel things around. In the first moment, our mind will cognize it, what's happening. If that's a sound, then, oh, I'm hearing a sound. If I'm seeing things, oh, I'm seeing things. There is nothing else, just seeing. But due to our desirable mind, chattering mind, it recognizes it that whether it is good or bad. And that recognition, whether that object is good or bad, is because of our own mental phenomena that we have, or previous knowledge that we have onto those objects. That not only the previous knowledge, but also our own stimulation. So because of that, that recognition will create the new sankharas, new stories, and new problems. So when we have those recognition, and that recognition come to the acknowledgement, when we acknowledge it, the acknowledgement is very important in our life. The acknowledgement is the key part, whether we turn to the positive or the negative. When we acknowledge it, if that's a negative, then we are going towards the negative thoughts, negativities. But in the same time, if we develop into the positive, then we are developing into the positivities. So that positivity is very important. And that positivity not because our desire, not because our lust, not because our hatred, but that's the pure understanding. And that pure understanding, we can get it from our understanding of our own mind. We are not generating those recognition, acknowledgements out of our lust, out of our hatred, out of our passions. But we are developing that positivity on top of our calmness and peaceful in a neutral way. So that's why to have that neutral positive stimulation or manifestation, first of all, we have to be very careful of ourselves, that what we are thinking, where is our mind? So the Vipassana meditation is very crucial in this case. It will allow us to see things as they truly are. Not things that what we want it to be, but as they truly are. So the things as they truly are, how can we get it? How can we know that? So we have to have some kind of tools that allows us, or that makes our mind in a one-pointedness, in a one particular object. So that's called a meditation. We are bringing our mind back to one object. So when we bring our mind back to our one object, our mind becomes calm. Our mind stays in one object. So that's the moment we feel peace, calm, and tranquil. So when we have this calmful mind, when we have this mind one pointed in one particular object, the result of this one pointed mind would be happy life, peaceful life, and at the same time hereafter, if we're reborn in somewhere, would be the good birth. On top of that, the purity of our mind. That purity of a mind is because we have suppressed all the defilement that we have. That's just the suppression of our defilements. But if something went wrong, even the slightest thing wrong, and we are not mindful enough, then those suppressed defilements will come out. And that would be the worse than before, because it will bring all the past memories, one after another. Once upon a time he did this, once upon a time he did that, once upon a time he said this, once upon a time he was walking like this, once upon a time he looked at me like that. So all those memories will come back. And we will generate a negativity and we react on top of that. So that's why the separation, as long as we are mindful, is good enough. As long as we are mindful, our mind will be calm and peace. But when we are not mindful, then that's very worse. So that's why the meditation, when we think about the meditation, is just the separation of our defilement. The insight meditation is to realize as they truly are by acknowledging it, understanding as they truly are, and letting go. So when we see something, when we feel something, we are just acknowledging it. First of all, we cognize it, the object is arising. When we cognize, we recognize it. So in the recognition time, we acknowledge it. While we are acknowledging it, we are accepting it as just the characteristic of changing. The things which arises stays only for a while. We are not grasping, or we are not creating, or we are not generating out of that. We are just accepting as they truly are. We know as it is. When we hear sound, just the sound. There is no male or female voice. There is no nice or bad. There is just the sound. And when we see things, we just see it. There is no nice, beautiful, or bad, or not beautiful. We just see things as it is. So when we are meditating here in this room, we're closing our eyes. In that case, we won't see anything. There is no seeing object. There will be only hearing object, and that's the first object that we'll have. The second object would be our body touching the ground or the air, heat or cold. And the third, which is very hard one, would be the mental object, and thoughts arises. And that's the very hard one. Immediately when we close our eyes, first thought, no matter how hard the sound is, how loud that sound would be, but the first, our mental thought will start. And in that case, we have those thoughts arises and we are caught into those thoughts. So in an insight meditation, we acknowledge it. It means that we are thinking. There is no thought where, how, just the thinking. my mind is thinking. And when we have that mind is thinking, and gradually we will come back again to our primary object. So today I'm going to introduce the primary object is rising and falling of abdomen, which I practice most of the time. Here we are not condemning any other techniques. And every techniques, meditation techniques, are good in its own place. But today, as I practice most of the time, is rising and falling of abdomen. So that would be the primary object, that where our mind will be sticking most of the time. So we are bringing our mind to the rising and falling of abdomen. When our mind is established in rising and falling of abdomen, it will be easier to come back and stay in the primary object. So as we know, our mind is always wanders away, and it won't be staying alone without an object. So if you don't have any particular object, it would be very hard to understand what is the mind. So the primary object here would be the rising and falling of abdomen, and then we will bring our mind back to ourselves in order to understand the misery that we are creating from things what arises to us. And all the things that arises from six senses, whether it is object which we see, or whether it is sound that we hear, or whether it is the heat or cold that we contact with the nature, or whether it is the thoughts that we have from the mind. We are just recognizing it, acknowledging it, and then at the end, after the acknowledging it, we are letting it go. And that letting it go is not because we can't cope with it, not because we're bored of it, or not because of we don't want it, or not because I have it enough. But we are letting it go because we know the reality that's called the changing nature, which is always changing. And to understand that changing nature, first of all, we have to have the calmful mind, or establishing one particular object. So while our mind is established in one particular object, it will be easier to come and go and come and go. So that will be the foundation. So without the foundation, we won't be able to understand things around, the things what's happening around with us. So the rising and falling of abdomen would be our foundation where our mind will stick in. So although this is only for the one day, I hope that for around 2 hours or 4 hours of meditation from now on would give you a little bit of test of what is meditation and what is insight meditation. So that will help you to understand things what's arising in your day-to-day life, and how you should cope with it, and how should you deal with those situations. So next I would like to invite you all to have a comfortable seat to start our meditation today.